This is the Lyndsay Stafford Show.
Welcome back to the Lyndsay Stafford Show. I am so excited for today's episode. I have Troy Outman here with us, and Troy is a local business owner in the Williamson County area, and he also does triathlons. He's got a lot of crazy things going on and exciting things to share, but I'm going to let Troy tell us a little bit about his business. He is in a very unique space. Troy, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Lyndsay. Thank you for having me here.
We're excited.
So my business is Outman Landworks, landscape architecture and design. I'm a local landscape architect, and ultimately I focus in on high residential projects. I'll do some small commercial and such, but my niche really is helping the homeowner.
Yeah, I love that. And I've seen your work. I've been fortunate enough to be able to check your website out, which you guys have to check it out. But tell us a little bit about what it is you actually do, because it's not just landscaping. You don't come and just put the mulch down and landscape. Tell us a little bit about your unique field.
Well, so ultimately, in the process of entertaining changes and desires for landscape, there's a lot of different approaches. And most people always know that they need a contractor. And they'll call a contractor out, but they don't always know exactly what to tell the contractor they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, some contractors will, put together a design or something, but it doesn't necessarily always really fit the client. It just fits what the contractor does. It's what's in their wheelhouse. And that's not usually always the best solution, but depending on the size and the scope and your desires of the project, that's where I come in. So I come in and I help cater that landscape, the outdoor experience to fit not just the property, but the homeowner and their life and what they do.
I love that. And for someone who has no knowledge of, I do know of perennial versus an annual, but that's about it. No knowledge of, green space or anything to do with plants. I think that's a really unique industry that you've kind of landed yourself in. What were you doing before you landed here?
I think that's all I've ever done. And I simply say that because I grew up in the country. I grew up on a horse ranch. My grandparents had large garden and a small orchard. My dad was big into the horses and property. So my whole life I've always been in the earth doing something. And then at a very young age, I think I was in fifth grade, when I went to my neighbor and I asked, because I wanted to make some extra money. And so, he hired me to help him on his property. And it's the only time in my life I've doubled my wages on my first day of work. He hired me for $1 an hour. And at the end of the day, he gave me a raise to $2 an hour.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I haven't been able to do that ever since.
That's amazing. But you're making a lot more than $2 an hour now.
A lot more than $2
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a lot more. But that being said, that grew. So, over the years, I, worked at helping neighbors and friends and stuff on their property. And then the real pivotal change happened. My dad he took a job where he ended up designing a very large equestrian center.
Oh, okay.
Or just shy of 500 acres, a 480 acre ranch that was very active. And then he was managing it. And so I was working kind of under my dad, helping him with this project. And the landscaper that came in to do all the grounds and stuff was Yoshioka Landscape, and he ended up offering me a job. So who does not want to get out from under their dad, right?
Right.
So I took this job landscaping, and I didn't realize that really was setting the course for the rest of my life. So so in summer of '88, I ended up getting adopted, and I say that because adopted by Dave Yoshioka, because he didn't just hire laborers. He invested in us. And so it was important that he was a teacher and a mentor. And so, I became very enthusiastic about learning the plants and their purpose and where they belong, where they don't belong.
Wow.
He didn't just put rocks on the ground. He placed them. They had motion and energy and direction. Everything has a purpose and a rhythm. And, so Yoshioka was, he was trained by Yamasaki, and everybody in our area knew Yamasaki. He was a big name. And, so it was pretty substantial to be able to get that start. And so then naturally I just kept progressing, and I went to school, got my first degree in ornamental horticulture with an emphasis in landscape. And I even had Ray Yamasaki come in to our design class
Wow.
as one of our guest speakers, which was just fascinating. I mean, he was like
Amazing.
the hero of our area. And, so yeah, then I started my own business doing, design, build, and it just kept progressing from there.
Isn't it amazing? I always say when you get this glimpse of like God has the roadmap for your life and you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
But once you've been through it, you can go back and go, oh, I see how it all connects. It's like you get a glimpse into his vision, which is just so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about 35 years doing this. Obviously, it was your passion from a very young age. What has kept you in it? How do you keep, in the same thing for that long? How do you stay so invested and excited about it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change. I did go through a stage of burnout, mentally, physically. My back completely gave out on me. So which was what changed my gears from doing design build and being a contractor to going back to school to becoming a landscape architect, because the doctors told me that I was pretty much one wrong move from a wheelchair.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, I got to do something different here. And at the same time, I was really kind of starting to get burned out on it. And that was simply because my focus of what drove me was getting out of place. So is what keeps me going is that ability to be able just to help people. I remove myself from the equation, and I just completely, whether they like it or know it or not, I adopt myself into every family that I work for. So it's just, I take care of them as if I'm taking care of my own family. And that's really what keeps me going, because it's just that desire to just be in there and help.
I love that. When it's so true, when you really go at your craft as a servant to the people that you're working with, it doesn't feel like work the same way. It just feels like serving. And I feel the same way about what I do. We get so invested. I had a meeting with a current client yesterday who's been with me for 4 years. And he just said, I know how much you put into everyone that you work with, and, thank you. And you put out a beautiful product. And it's like, there's so much fulfillment that comes from that. So I love that it's like you went back to why. It's not about the landscaping, it's about the people.
Yeah.
That's just your way of serving them. What a beautiful thing. Okay, when you go to a property, I want to talk a little bit about what you do. What are you noticing? What do you see? Like, show us what you see, because it's got to be totally different than what I would see walking up to a property.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question. I got to be careful, because I think one of the, and I say that because one of the areas that I think a lot of people are self-conscious and haven't me come out to their house, whether it's professionally or just,
As a friend.
is that they're so embarrassed. It's like, oh, please don't be judging me. And, and I see things that, probably the average person doesn't, because it's what I do. I mean, it's all I've done. And so, I notice, slopes and watersheds, and I see where, drainage issues are going to be. I'll see, cracks in concrete, but I don't just see the crack. I see why it's cracking, what's going on there. Plants and plant placements, the types of plants, are they using the right plants in the right place? There's just so many things that catches my eye. But then at the same time, I'm also, admiring the way that people use their space. It's like I get inspiration sometimes. It's like I'll show up at different spots, and it's like, oh wow, I hadn't thought to do something like that.
Yeah.
And so I put that in my, in my toolbox. Like, I take that out and play with it and kind of personalize it for something later on. So yeah, I'm always looking and observing and admiring, and lack of better terms, judging. But
Yeah. You're analyzing.
Analyzing. That's much better.
That's a good word.
Yes, analyzing.
I love that. So where do people most get it wrong? So if you could give some advice for the average person, say me, what do they usually get wrong? What would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I don't know as if I'd say that they're getting it wrong. I'd say that they're putting it out of order. And that's usually what I see is that people have lofty dreams, which is great. I want to see lofty dreams. And they have, so they have these desires. It's like, I want this and this and this and so on. But it's first, you need to start looking at what it is that you have to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Look at your palette. And sometimes, looking at your budget is also very important, right? So does what you want fit where you want to put it?
Yeah.
Does what you want actually fit your life, your lifestyle, your time? Is it balance?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a design process, and so you don't try and start with the finished product. You have to start with figuring out your goals, objectives, and inventory analysis of the property, understanding the why of that. Because it's like people go, oh, I want this, I want that. It's like, why do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
You might just like the idea of it,
right?
But does it really fit you? Does it fit your property? So that's where I think most people they get it. They just put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
And so you got to put it in proper order. And when you put it in proper order, then you end up figuring out what it is that you want.
Sure.
So I often tell people, I help people figure out what they didn't know they want.
Yeah. You get them to slow down.
Yeah.
Instead of just, going.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks good. I'll take that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. What questions do you ask a client that most people wouldn't think to ask?
I love that. So I really like to get to know my clients. I mean, I develop a relationship with them, not just kind of like, a questionnaire of, your favorite color and favorite plant
Sure.
and so on, where it's just, that's kind of stale as far as I'm concerned. So I like to know their lifestyle, their hobbies. One question that I ask often is, like favorite animals and such, which has actually ended up driving the direction on some of my designs.
Oh, interesting.
I had one where I was like, I didn't ask him that question on my initial visit where I normally did. And I started working on the design. And then I called him up and I said, hey, you guys like turtles? I mean, it was just, right? Random. But she's like, we love turtles. And she gave me this whole story of how their whole family is like around turtles.
Oh
and I was
my
like,
gosh.
cool. Because part of what my design was this water feature that was in their yard. So I ended up creating a turtle water feature.
Wow.
And it just sculpted that way. And I have another client, they love, large birds of prey. And so I worked that into the fountain.
Wow.
And stuff like that. So, being able to get some of those personal touches, but more importantly than that, I end up asking people what they don't like.
Yeah.
So when we look at pictures and stuff, and they're all, because everybody wants to say, yeah, this is what I like this, I like this. And I'm like, what don't you like?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're looking at concepts, when we're looking at images and stuff, it's like, what is it you don't like about this? And that challenges people a lot more on who they are and what their desires are. But it gives me a ton of information so that I know what to stay away from.
Well, because you have to kind of get in their head
Completely.
to be able to map it, right? I think about my assistant who is now my director of operations. She's been with me for 8 years. Yeah. And she can pretty much know if I'm going to like something or not. But she's had 8 years to figure that out, right?
Exactly.
And she'll remind me when we have new people come in, Lyndsay, they don't read your mind like I do. You got to remember that. And you got to get in their head. How long does a typical project take? And I know there's probably a lot of fluctuation, but do you have an average or a typical time frame?
No, there's no typical time frame. I've got projects that are 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And I've got projects that could be 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, depending on the scale.
And anything in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what's the difference between something that looks good on paper, but that actually works long term?
Yeah. That I think is probably one of the most valuable questions anybody can ask. And I say that simply because there's a lot of people out there that they draw pretty pictures and they go here. And one of the most disheartening things that I hear from more clients than I'd like to on that initial introduction is they'll tell me, oh, I just hired a landscape architect and I spent X amount of money and we have no desire of doing anything they want.
Yeah.
They drew a pretty plan,
right?
But it doesn't work. And so that the plan, it needs to function, it needs to be buildable, and it needs to fit. And that fit needs to fit the property, it needs to fit the person and the personality.
Yeah.
And so just because it's a pretty picture or it looks like it's been done professionally, just doesn't mean it's going to work.
You have to do it right. It's so interesting. I find the same thing. We obviously, in the line of work that we do, where we help businesses with branding and, on operations, but focusing on the branding or marketing side. So many businesses that we talk to are like, oh, well, I did this with this person and this with that person. And it's like, you didn't have a package. You had a couple things you were throwing spaghetti at the wall. And, it takes somebody who actually cares enough to take the time to say, let me help analyze it with you and walk you through what makes sense for you. Yeah. And I love that that's how you do that. So what do people, tell me an example of what people think they want, but then realize they actually don't want that.
Most of the time it's going to be specific types of plants.
Yeah.
They'll see a plant and they're going to, oh yeah, I want that in my yard.
Yeah.
But it might not necessarily be that plant. It might be something about that plant that attracts them.
Sure.
Because that specific plant might not really fit their yard.
Right.
But then there's, features, fire pits, swimming pools, hot tubs. And, it's not unusual for somebody to get a swimming pool put in and then realize that, we don't even use it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an expensive aha.
Yeah, it is.
And, or, a fire pit is like, well, okay, this pit sits out in our yard and we never go out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, so just really being able to carefully go through the process, because if a swimming pool really fits you and fits your family, then perfect.
Yeah.
Let's dial that in and let's design a pool that's going to just cater to you and your desires. And the same, with the fire pit. But, like I said earlier, sometimes it's the idea of it.
Yeah.
It's, that maybe it's the idea of gathering around by the pool or something like that, but they're not really using it. So if that's the case, we can create that experience differently in a manner that's going to cost you a whole lot less, be a lot more rewarding, and be able to bring everybody together and be able to collectively take care of that idea, that dream.
I hear just this common theme that you slow people down to actually think about what they want so that you can be sure you give them what's at the root of their desire, not what they might think they want.
Right.
I love that. What's something simple that would completely change how someone experiences their home?
I'm not sure about simple. Sometimes it is. But the biggest element is circulation. The way that you interact with your outdoor space. And whether that be your stairs, the type of stairs, the rise, run, the configuration, how steep the stairs are, where the landings are, your pathways, how wide they are, the material they're made out of, but then even, just how you connect different features and elements of your property. If you have something that's just straight across your yard, but the path takes you out and around to get to it, naturally, eventually you're going to start cutting right through the middle of it, to get there. And, then people are going to go like, but I don't want my yard completely dissected by, pathways and stuff. So that's where, thoughtful design comes in. So it doesn't look like, you just got all these like intersecting paths and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we've got throughways and, corridors and all that stuff going through my yard, but it's thoughtful, paths. And so it all joins together, but it's not messy.
Just functionality. Yeah. I love that. So you've been doing this for over 35 years. What do you know now that you wish you knew earlier? And I'm sure there's a list because that's how life is, but maybe one or two things that man, I wish I had learned this earlier.
I think that's what comes to mind the most is, so when I was getting started, I really wished I wanted more experience. I wanted to be older. I wanted, I didn't want to be where I was in life. Yeah. Right.
Isn't that
it's
life?
Like, I'm in my early 20s. I'm getting started. I'm getting, I've just got my horticulture degree or I'm in the process of getting my education. And, and I had a, great experience being trained by Yoshioka and stuff. So, in my young ego, puffed up pride, I was like, yeah, I want to be, conquer the world. But I wasn't slowing down myself to embrace where I was in the learning process. I wanted to be there. And as time went on, and eventually I started to get older. Now I am older. And I've realized that learning process, it never stops.
Yeah.
And so if I was able to go back and talk to my younger self, I'd say, hey, just embrace where you are. Be thankful for the process that you have. Listen to everything that you can. Learn from anybody you can possibly learn from, and don't be in a hurry to grow up, because you're going to rob yourself from what you have for today.
That is such great advice.
Because ultimately, learning never has a finish line.
Yeah. And as you get older, you do learn to embrace that a little bit of like, I'm just embracing the learning right now. And I think you nailed it. Like that ego that we have, it's ego and insecurity combined when we're younger, until hopefully we work through that as we get older, where we feel like it's not okay to say, I'm just learning. Right. And then at some point, hopefully with maturity, you learn to just go, it's okay to say, I'm just learning and figuring it out. And it's one of the things we try to teach our kids is just be okay with, I say, do it ugly, and just like do it even though you don't know how to do it. So it's really good advice. When you finish a project, what do you take the most pride in?
The reaction of my clients.
Yeah, I figured.
Even from way back, when I was doing design build and I'm putting the final touches on a project, and they come out and they're like, oh, wow. And today, it doesn't matter if it's, a small project or a large project, just that the experience that I get to live through them. And there's, I hear, I had a dream for something, out here, but I never dreamed it could be like this. And just the comments that I get, and the gratitude and the awe of like, how did you do this type of thing? That tells me I did it. I achieved.
Yeah. There's nothing better than hearing a happy client.
Yeah.
Seeing the look on their face or the comments, like I just shared with you, it's like nothing feels better than like to be acknowledged that you were able to provide them with something that they value. It just feels so good. Okay. So what are you most excited about right now that you're working on?
All right. That's a great question. I've got a lot of projects that I'm working on, and I'm always excited about all of them. The common denominator in all of it is the fact that I always have the opportunity of creating a safe, functional place that brings people together. And pretty much everything I do, even if it's a parking lot, I create a safe, functional place that brings people together. And I guess my prayer is that just never gets old, because that is ultimately always the project that I'm working on. So it's not, I can talk about, the individual projects and, the natural restorations and the, repair, the renovation project that I got going on, or a permaculture project. They're all exciting.
I don't even know those words.
And, it's just working with nature. Yeah. And, but really at the end of the day, it's just being able to make a change. Just nothing ever gets better than that.
I actually, so much of what you say I resonate with, because it's like, we get excited, Dave and I get excited talking about any of our clients, and we talk about them all the same way. Like, oh my gosh, they're the best at this. And you got to go here and try this, try this food. And they're so good. And we'll go on and on about why they're so great at why we chose them, why we want to work with them. And the excitement, I can't say one is more exciting than the other. It's just, they're all exciting because they're all unique in their own space.
Right.
So I feel that. That's amazing. Okay. So Troy, you've been amazing. This is so incredible. And we're going to link your website and all of that. But before I let you go, I want you to share one last thing. If someone's listening and wants to improve their space, besides reaching out to you, which they should definitely do, and we'll talk about how they find you, where would you suggest that they start?
First thing that I'd want them to do is to take good notes is what it is that they currently don't like. identifying what's wrong.
Yeah.
And then figure out their goals and objectives of what it is that they do want.
Sure.
And then, work at the research and stuff to figure out how to get those goals and objectives. And does it properly fit, where they are and what they have to work with.
Yeah. Slow down and think about what they actually want, what they don't want, how they're going to use it.
Yep. Figure out the why they want it.
Yeah. I love that. And obviously they can call you. Can you tell our listeners and viewers where to find you?
Well, okay. So on my website, which is outmanlandworks.com, and then email me anytime, which is outmanlandworks@gmail.com. And my phone number is 931-451-0195.
Text or call.
Yep.
If you want to change your backyard, change your landscape, and make a functional space that brings you joy, call Troy.
There you are.
Oh, there you go. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Troy, thank you so much for being here today as my guest. It's an honor to work with you and to have you here to share with our listeners and our viewers what you do. So thanks for listening. We'll put all the links here on the show notes. Thanks for being a part of the Lyndsay Stafford Show. If you found value in this episode, first of all, go follow Troy, go check him out, but like, share, comment, rate, and review.